Kailangan Hello.
Hello.
Oo. Kumusta? How do you feel?
I just put on my headset. Hello.
Can you hear me?
So yes, that is right. What is your question? How are you po? I'm okay. Thank you. Is it okay if I just examine you for a minute? Or are you sure now? Ano? More painful now? Parang just redness now. Okay. Has it subsided already? Or it's more red today? I don't know. It's less red for sure. But you can walk. Yeah. Yung aking ultrasound, when did they do that? Ultrasound of the leg mo? Usually once the response is clear, that is like a focus contact. But I'll ask the nurse if the condition is negative. So I can go to the real room. Yes, what is negative? Transfer to a regular, a normal room. Wednesdays. Where? When? Usually this morning. Kaya po kayo this morning. Kinabakan ka ba? Okay, fine. Sige, okay, go ahead. Can I just listen to your heartbeat, your lungs? Sige, okay. Ultrasound mo aking paa, may pinagin na. Actually po kasi, sa mga negative person po, pag siguro negative na results, no? So, nakalimutan ka. Kasi sa Philippines, is dapat. Pero kapag dapat saan? Philippines, tawag ko lang sa Philippines. So, sometimes this afternoon, gagawin niya, may hindi po. Ano, it is true o sa other room? Other room po. Kasi, ginagawa ko ito ngayon sa vascular lab. Actually, meron po sariling po cargo. Pag emergency, pwede ka. Sabi sa akin, kapag ito nung gagawin? Pwede na sa mga. Pero bak sa regular room na lang. Sige. Pwede tayo po, balikan po kayo, ha? Okay. Pero po kayo.
Hello? So, okay, hindi mabuti. So, keep that way. Yung antibiotic mo is IV? Okay, anyway, I had to tell you. What? Where is your hearing aid? I should bring your hearing aid later. Why don't you give it? Tell me where it is. It's hard, eh? No, I'm talking about other people talking to you. You need a hearing aid because it's just you let me know where it's hidden. And yeah, That's the problem. That's a real problem. Okay, it has nothing to do with the mask because ears are not covered by the mask. Your hearing aid is supposed to function and you must get used to it. Where is it? I mean, it's such a waste. Hindi na, nadinig mo na yung sinabing explanation, kaya sufficient na yon. Sufficient na yung explanation na yun. I don't have to nag Ike about it. Okay, just listen to me, no? Okay, the reason I called you is because Auntie Rita is not doing well. She has gone into septic shock. Okay? So I will now forward to you Pin's message to me. All right? Septic shock. Oo. So I don't know that if mommy's was septic. I don't know if it's like mommy's, but it is that stage of infection where the blood changes, like puppy. Okay. So I just wanted to tell you that I don't think. Oo. Okay. So that's all I wanted to tell you, no? So I will yeah, it is. So anyway, I'm just preparing you and think about it. I will now send you pins ano. I will send you pins Jomar, good morning. Jomar.
Hi, good morning, Ma'am Giselle.
Good morning, Jomar.
Morning po.
How are you?
I'm okay po.
Congratulations, Jomar. You hold an important, responsible position in LB now.
Thank you, ma'am. Medyo nagulat lang din pero I'll ac- I accepted the challenge.
Good. So how is your new chancellor and the team?
Yeah, okay naman po. Ang kagandahan is diverse yung team from the different colleges, yung nilagay niya as vice chancellors, as assistant vice chancellors. Tsaka halo-halo din po. Maraming bata, maraming ano.
Good.
Medyo ano rin po, challenging because of the pandemic. Like sa graduate school, ano pa rin, nakaano kami, that's entertainment. May Monday group, Tuesday group, yung pagpasok.
Oo nga. Well, actually, lalo ngayon because anticipating Christmas, actually yung mga ibang public places wisely, nire-restrict na yung mga seniors. I understand. Sa Makati,
Opo.
the malls do not allow seniors. That's probably because maybe more of the the younger people will be going to the malls. Yeah.
Yeah, opo. Yeah, malapit na naman pa ang vaccine sana sa Philippines. Ano?
Well, that we don't know. Well, we're looking for the best source of the vaccine. If it's AstraZeneca that is still available, then yes, that is what we will go for. It seems the consortium of private companies will go for it.
It's even cheaper than the others.
Yes, because it's that more traditional vaccine. It's the protein vaccine. Whereas the other two, they're the RNA vaccine. So that's newer technology. Of course, meron mga nagwa-warn against it, pero magaganda yung yung effectiveness nila, di ba?
Opo. Matataas yung effectiveness.
And then I think well, I'll just greet Gerald.
Ay, sige po. Opo.
Who's Gerald? Hi, Gerald, anyway. So, thing is, because it's mRNA, parang it can actually produce little amounts of the virus-like particle or protein. And therefore, parang mas pwedeng matagal yung effect niya as a trigger for your immune system to continue producing the antibodies or even the cellular immunity, cellular response. Of course, ang downside nun, yung sinasabi pa rin na until now, nobody's received the mRNA vaccine. This is the first. Ang tagal yung concept na yan. Tagal na yan. Okay, even for cancer, iba gagamit nga ng adenovirus, di ba?
Yeah, adenovirus.
Oo. Pero, well, finally, para bang napuwersa na yung scientific community to try it. In regard naman to yung sinasabi nila na it might have an effect on this and that and this and that. Pero very specific siya eh. Diba? I mean, sa biology, you know that the basis also of a lot of the interactions is very specific interactions.
Yes po.
Although now, the concept also of microRNA relies on this idea that sometimes the strategy is not specificity, extreme specificity. In fact, the transcription factors or say some mRNA regulators, they serve the purpose of orchestrating or coordinating regulation. So it's a very interesting field. So LB, tuloy pa rin ba yung modeling ninyo? Meron ba kayong grupo na nagmo-model naman ng
Yes po. I'm part of the PICARI project on lung adenocarcinoma. Dapat po tapos na siya pero na pandemic so extended na naman. Opo.
So, ito yung grupo din ni ni Gladys at
yes, opo, I'm doing the modeling po.
That's so great. Si Frank Heralde na i-interact mo si Fred.
Apa, si Sir Frank. Oo.
Alright, Frank, yes.
na ano lang, na pandemic kaya medyo na-delay ng konti yung ibang output.
Yeah, but I think the Zoom allows us to precisely meet
Mhm.
more often.
Ang
Okay.
nangyari po yata yung sa experiments because of restrictions in going to the
Yes.
laboratory for like 2 or 3 months. Mm.
Yes. So then people like I know the group
Mm.
very well. So I know Frank Heraldes group in Lung Center. Of course, I
Yes
know
po.
Carlito Lebrilla and all the
Mm.
MDs that are. I was telling Frank, who was our PhD student, my advisee, that should make sure to get the pathologists, the MDs in Lung Center,
Mm.
to go to UC Davis to really learn, the molecular pathology of it.
Yeah po.
Anyway,
Mm.
I hope everyone had a chance to do that. At this point, Raymond is here. Hi, Raymond. Morning.
Good morning, Sir Raymond.
Oh, good morning. Hi. Let me just set up my desk.
So I think, Jomar, Raymond had a question to you in the email.
Ah, talaga po.
Yeah, well, I'll just articulate it.
Sige
He
po.
asked whether it looks like early to middle career scientists, researchers feel that they are um, small fish swimming in a biggish pond. Is that a feeling or is that a sense that you have?
I'm not sure po if that's really the feeling because we didn't do the survey. I don't know, but what I experienced from my colleagues, millennial pa rin naman ako, nasa boundary.
Mhm.
And also with my students, most of them are like searching for purpose. Parang ano, if they don't feel that what they're doing has something to do with their life or by purpose, parang aalis sila sa 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 organization na yon. And I think also probably that's also the reason in a bigger organization, if they don't feel any purpose on doon kasi napakarami, baka hindi sila maging productive. I'm not sure po, pero yun po yung nafe-feel ko with some of my colleagues, kaya yung iba palipat-lipat. Although ako matagal na ako sa LB, but my other colleagues are like that. Kasi sometimes they
Raymond,
don't feel.
so you heard that. So Raymond, I asked the question to Jomar. Your question na hindi niya nasagot kasi he overlooked it about them feeling like they're like small fish in a biggish pond. So, I just gave a talk in a private university and I talked about the sense of purpose.
Mm.
But my talk was bigger. It was developing a research culture in the university. But I think, Raymond, many people are waiting to listen to you. Okay?
Well, thank you for that. First of
Yes,
all, I want to thank Jomar for bringing up
yes.
this. We converse a lot
Wonderful.
in private capacity, and I think
Yes.
Jomar is one of the bright young stars of UP.
Of course. I know.
I hope he wins the major prize next year.
I am so
Fingers crossed. But I do think that we don't do a good job in the Philippines of grooming young talent to the point where they appreciate it's like being part of a network, which is your discipline, and that even having small contributions, or seemingly small but high quality contributions to the global enterprise is much more important than having there's so much push for media publicity and
I understand that. I'm with you all the way on that, Raymond. I
we have
don't,
some
I don't like grandstanding. I
no,
really don't. I don't like it. I don't like
I can understand the psychology behind it, because we were all 8 months ago, we were all hoping we had something to contribute to COVID-19.
yeah, yeah.
So ganun talaga ang ano. But
Oh,
at the same time, while you're doing that, you should not leave the basics behind. I think this is what
I
I've.
totally agree with that. I totally agree. And the pubs, you've got to make a pitch for that. There's
I
no
will.
compromise. No compromise to me.
I even have reading assignments for people. If But I wonder how many people we have in our audience. Yan lang.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, Raymond, I feel whoever is really interested shows up. And then the
Yeah.
conversation becomes very, very substantive and meaningful.
Yeah.
But there are people from engineering. So we're now always connected with UP FD, Tito Aliga, and they want to listen to you. They want to know how they're doing it in LaSalle because they already know UP. Okay, so I said, so Raymond will go first, and then I'll just, pitch in with my collaborations and linkages. But at this point, I also wanted to say, I think the word is philosophical. You must be philosophical about it. And there's something about, of course, modelers like you who tend to think philosophically. And that is what I've been trying to say in the university ever since I was young. Even as a young student, I had this thing about, having your strong sense of purpose. See? So, and that is what Jomar just said. Some people do not know.
Well, this is why I won't give away the punchline, but I'm going to quote a Nobel laureate.
All right. Okay.
Someone who's multiple levels above
Yes.
us. So I think something about what he said in 2017 really struck a nerve with me, and I keep using it nowadays in my talks. Hi, morning, Al.
Hi,
Morning.
Al.
Morning, Giselle.
We
Morning,
always
Joe.
rely on Al
Good morning po.
to tie up
Magandang-
things, to put things in perspective. So with Jomar and Al today, I think we'll have a good one.
No, Jomar is gonna be a lead actor today. I'm just gonna be a
Yeah.
backup to Chua.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
a bright.
this was his idea, actually. So
Yeah, he's a bright. It's true. He's a bright young star. A bright star.
No, we'll support you, Jomar, whatever it takes.
He
Thank
gave
you
this
po.
he gave this outstanding talk in the DTI webinar. He did. He really did. He gave the first talk, and then at some point, Gap Legaspi gave a talk. But I think Jomar set the tone. Remember that, Jomar?
Yes po. It was that time very challenging time for COVID kasi yun yung pataas ng pataas 'di ba? Around July, August.
by the way, what's happening now? Why is it an illusion that there seems to be a spontaneous flattening?
Based on our modeling po, kasi we were doing modeling na rin with ADB. From our models, it seems like the testing efforts and the contact tracing, kasi for many provinces, talagang nag-increase, nag-improve. I think that's the effect. But as you can see now, it's not really declining, like it's actually parang
It's flat.
stabilizing.
It's flat. Yeah.
Flat. So still there are around 1,000 cases per day. So
Pa rin.
mataas pa din siya. Although
Mataas pa rin, but
yung decline is because of the testing and the contact tracing efforts that we did.
nowhere near what we feared half a year ago. Fingers crossed, baka sa Pasko tumaas.
Yun po, kaya kailangan pa din. I think the DOH, parang everyday sila nagsasabi na sa Pasko, bawal magganto, ganyan. Kasi baka nga biglang mag-increase
Ang mga mall sa Manila, Raymond, bawal ang mga seniors in anticipation of
Pareho.
crowd.
55 lang, I think.
And kids, I think, kasi if you have kids there, then they'll have parents with them.
55 ba or 65?
15 to 65
Hindi
is the
pwede. Ang
50?
15. 1-5.
15. Okay.
oo.
Below 15, above
below
65.
15 and over 65. Oo.
Pasok ka ba, Giselle?
Kasi kung 50, Al, damay ka na.
Nako.
Let me just get a glass of water. Sandali. Mahaba.
I always have my...
Elmer, kamusta ka na? Kamusta kayo dyan sa
Elmer, how are you? Hi, Gerald. So,
Okay lang.
Ay,
Okay
there's-
lang kayo dito. Gusto na po.
Tapos na yung kalabari, babalik.
Hindi ko pa masabi.
Hindi mo masabi. Okay lang. Keep your fingers crossed at magdasal ka na lang.
Good morning. Good evening, Elmer.
Good
You were
morning sa
supposed
inyo dyan.
in New York in November. Wala, canceled lahat yung plano.
Wala.
Ano can do?
Wala rin kaming travel plans ngayon.
Wala. Yung mga balikbayan natin, hindi makauwi.
Oo.
Too difficult for everybody.
Pero
But say,
it's so nice because this is really an opportunity for collaborators and professionals to become friends.
Elmer, kailan ka magbabalik scientist?
Ako, pagkatapos ng pandemic, meron na akong offer sa PNRI.
PNRI, okay.
Sir Kaloy.
Good.
Hanapin.
22, I suppose,
22.
or late next
Hopefully,
year.
Summer 22.
Summer. Okay.
Arcilia. He's gotten another guy from Atomic Research from Switzerland yata. So they're doing good development. So it's very good. Ano, kumusta ang ating attendance, Jomar? Wala pa?
We have 8 now, including us.
Ayan na, nandito na si Vic. Morning, Val. Thanks for showing up for us.
Morning.
Always a good thing to have our elders. Tayo. To be watching over our successors. Ano, mga successors na natin ito mga to eh.
We need more young people. Dali, ano tayo ng mga below 40? Mag-imbita tayo.
Fresh blood, baby.
Let me send a message to people.
Emerson is here. Young.
Here from Australia. Kumusta kayo sa Australia, Vince?
Okay lang. Okay lang dito. Mainit na.
Hi, Vince.
It's going down na? Nakakabike ka na sa labas?
Oo, nag-bike naman ako kahit na malamig.
Okay. Good. Ang tawag nito. Ikaw, kailan ka magbabalik scientist, Vince? Wala ka ba sa Vatican?
I just did one sa MSU IIT couple of years back, 2018.
Oh, it's recent.
Okay. Didn't know that. Okay, sige. Tanongin ko sa
I
Jinky.
was there for a month
1 month lang. Okay.
sa MSU IIT.
Hi, Vince.
Hi, Giselle.
Hello. I'd like to recognize also Val Reyes. Val Reyes is from UP EarthP and a friend of my husband, so he's Eng.
Morning, Giselle.
Morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Sabi ko nga pala, we have to watch out our successors already. Kasi tanda na tayo.
Ina, how's your sister?
Georgina is okay.
Good.
Yeah, but she's enjoying her retirement.
Yes.
Morning, Edsel. Kumusta kayo sa Maryland?
Wow, Edsel is
Not
here.
Maryland, South Carolina. South
Carolina.
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 Hi,
Hindi ka
Edsel.
nag-book ka NSF? You didn't
Good
have
evening.
to go to Washington?
I'm still doing it virtually. So,
Okay.
kasi di pa bukas talaga yan sa. So, but
Okay.
every day it's all meeting. So this is now my my pit meeting today. So,
Thank you for coming and joining us. So
oh,
you can
sure,
see our-
sure.
You can
Cynthia
see our
Llanos
fresh
from
blood.
Cynthia Llanos from TIP is here.
Yeah,
So
Hello, good morning po.
narating ba yung boss mo? Narating si Beth? Hindi.
I think so, sir.
Very good. Kasi
Yeah.
nasa inyo mga fresh blood eh.
She forward.
Yeah. You're very, have a very fertile ground in TIP.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Sino pa dito ang nating mga dumarating? Mga young participants.
Not
Si Pia,
Urbana's here.
papakita ba? Si Tito, nandito na. Tito, aliga.
Young participant din yan, Ala.
Participant.
Hello, Giselle. Hello, Al. Hello, Raymond. How are you?
Fine. Good, thanks.
Si Raymond.
Kay is here. Very, very
Hey.
shiny star.
Ah,
A bright star.
Morning.
Morning, Kay.
Good morning.
magandang umaga. Si Leopold Ilag.
Emerson is here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Magandang
Valis here.
Nath Hermosa, he's our speaker on Friday.
Good morning.
Oh, good
Morning,
morning.
everyone.
Okay, good. I'm happy that we have more young people.
Ba't na ako dyan, Raymond?
Salamat, Raymond.
Dapat lang. Ang mga oldies but goodies, matuto na tayo kung ano tayo tutulong natin sa mga susunod sa atin.
Yup. Ito si Raymond, maraming ginagawang magic sa Lasal eh. You tell us what you're doing right, Raymond, ha?
Well, okay, just a word of warning. I won't be talking about LaSalle specifically. I thought this would be more of a chance for me to talk about personal outlook and philosophy with respect to scientific research. So it's not management oriented. It's
we are looking after, in UP now, we are trying to bring our ideas closer to the market. But apparently, we are hitting a logjam. So we want maganda yung research topics mo. It talks about research productivity, spearheading research to what is useful, etc.
Well, I think we need more diversity. Kasi
anyway, you tell us.
If we say that. Sige, during the, okay. Pero kailangan magtanong kayo. I want it to be, conversational. Kulang na lang dito, fireplace.
Kaya nga eh.
Isa-is na tayo.
If you stick to the outline of your topic, that's what we are looking for. We are trying to learn and put something in place to improve the UP innovation ecosystem.
Well, Al would be the best person here.
Ecosystem. And
hindi pa kami nagkikita ni Tito eh.
I've heard you talk in the OST about what you're doing in LaSalle, what some of your students have done. That's what we would like to learn.
All right, I'll do what I can. But for innovation, of course, I will defer to my sports car driving colleague, si Al, who has the hard evidence of.
We'll go to war, baby.
Okay lang, Raymond.
So that would be another topic, Al and Tito. So we look at the innovation systems of LaSalle and UP.
Actually, let's have an earned fee session, guys. Tito, Val.
Sige, yeah. We can have
Absolutely.
I wanted to co-host with you eh.
Val is and Chicho, they lead our innovation task force committee.
I see.
And we want to get something started. We have started. Unfortunately,
magsalita.
Sige.
Ferds here. Ferds.
Morning,
Ferds. Erica.
Morning. Earned fee. Lahat kayo magpakita, ha? Kayo magsasalita.
Nga lang, I will have to leave at 9 o'clock because of another meeting. But as I was telling Giselle, we can always ask Giselle to give us a talk later on. But anyway, I'm sure the other people will appreciate exchanging ideas with everybody. Thank you.
Very good.
In a few minutes, we will start. We have 21 now, and maybe in another 2 minutes. It's around 5.
Yes, Madam President.
Erica is here. Birds is here.
Erica, long time no see.
Good morning.
I'm so busy in AIM.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi, Erica.
Morning.
I think, Tito, you should get to hear the AIM students pitch their innovations, and some of them have startups. We already featured 3 of them, but that's not enough. There are many of them.
Nag-connect na ako ng isang startup ng AIM. They already got the grant.
Move forward. Real startups, huh?
Yep.
All righty. Is that Mahar? Lagmay.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good. Nice of see our young ones over here. Magpapamana ka na rin ba?
Hello, Mahar. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
Mahar.
Good
morning.
Sana pala sinabi natin, anyone over 40 should bring a companion below the age of 40. Para
Okay.
Kaya ng business ko, sige kayo.
Tatawagin ko yung grandson ko.
I just wanted to say that one of the graduates of AIM, city manager, actually, one of the inventors is the son of Palafox. They
Uh-huh.
use your data, your open, your data from
Right.
LiDAR, and yeah,
They
NOAA.
need it. They need it.
They're using it.
They're using it. Okay, that's
Yes.
good. That's good po.
Really
Yeah,
good.
babae ito, no, ma'am, yung anak
Yan,
ni
lalaki.
Palafox.
Si Michael
Lalaki.
Pedro and the son of Palafox.
Palafox.
So they already have their app, City Manager, and it's used
Oh,
to plan many, new cities in Mindanao.
that's good. That's good.
Okay. We
Hello.
filled one page already, so I think we're ready to rock and roll. Madam President.
Okay po.
I'm not the moderator or the.
Okay.
Jomar pala, Jomar, kaya mo yan.
Yes, good morning everyone, and thank
Good
you
morning.
for attending. For those in the US, good evening pala. Okay. Yeah, so it's 8:06 and we can start. I see many people already, and just to give you a brief background there, why we have this. Of course, for those people who are members of PAASE, you saw my message in PAASE group that I think it's a good time to discuss mentoring future mentors, especially now that we are seeing many quote and unquote millennial PhDs or millennial scientists are already stepping up in the ladder of sa research as being leaders. So I think we have two great speakers now in this fireside chat, and I will start na rin to introduce the first person who will provide us some insights regarding this mentoring future mentors, Dr. Raymond Artan of De La Salle University. But he said he's not going to talk about La Salle, but more on his philosophy. He's the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation of the LSU and also a professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering and an academician of NASD. So let's welcome Raymond Tan.
Thanks so much, Jomar. As Jomar mentioned, first of all, let me say thank you for coming up with this idea. I think it's timely that we look at the role of PAASE in mentoring emerging researchers to get them to the state where they maximize their talents. It's an ecosystem in the Philippines which is still developing, and I have observed that obviously it's not optimized the way it is in a developed country like the US or Australia. So what we can do is, because we have substantial membership with experience in such countries, we can probably find a way to extract lessons from our exposure, take them home and make sure that the next generation Filipino researchers get the most scientific success out of their careers. Now, I had intended to speak from my own personal experience and my own outlook over a 2+ decade research career. But I understand some of our colleagues in the audience might be interested in the La Salle recipe, so to speak. So I can talk a bit about that. Not all of it is trade secret, but really a lot of it will be my own outlook as a researcher. So let me begin by saying that part of the fundamental problem in the Philippines is that we misunderstand what a PhD degree is. And this is almost like the ancestral root cause of the entire problem, and everything ripples from there. In the Philippines, a PhD degree is thought to confer to the holder the status of a seasoned researcher. Whereas to the rest of the world, a PhD degree is completion of basic training to pursue a research career. And I think what happens is young people, once they get their PhD degrees, we heap expectations on them, which are often unreasonable. And as a result, their career development becomes stunted, and they either fail to maximize their scientific output, or they may actually abandon the research track completely and do, for example, professional management within a university setting, which is fine if you like doing that kind of stuff. But if it's something you end up doing because you have no choice, then it's a waste of the prime years of a researcher. I would have you note, psychologically, the peak creativity of humans really comes in the early stages of their careers. Take Einstein, for example. 4 Nobel Prize winning papers, and one of them was Nobel Prize winning, 4 were 4 in total in a span of a few months when he was in his mid-20s. And I would argue that his last major work happened when he was in his mid-30s, and thereafter he was basically downhill, running on reputation rather than actual scientific output. So yeah, you really need to maximize development before you hit 40, because then things become rather, how do you say this? Things become a bit more difficult once you hit the age of 40. Hang on, I need to switch a bit to my backup internet line. So give me a split second to do this. All right, I'm back. So how do we solve this problem? I think we can begin to look for solutions by understanding the European framework for research careers, which divides the scientific research career into 4 stages. Very quickly, R1 is researcher in training, which would be PhD students. R2 would be a recognized researcher. In other words, having earned your PhD degree, you would then be recognized as a legitimate researcher, but not yet capable of fully independent research. So in the US, this would be what a postdoc would be doing. So for a couple of years or so, you'd be a level 2 researcher. R3 would be what you'd consider a moderately successful researcher in the Philippines, which is a researcher who's independent and essentially is able to do his or her own work. But the trouble, again, in the Philippines is because of the stunting of the professional growth of many of our researchers, they either end up doing non-research work, or they end up being stunted at the levels of R2 or R3. Now, what I hoped we would discuss this morning is how do we get Filipino researchers, and I mean Filipino researchers who are based in the Philippines, how do we get them to this state where they get to R4, which is a leading researcher as defined in the European framework? And essentially you'd look for things like, if you did a database search, say in Google Scholar in a particular field, does that person's name appear in the top tiers of the ranking? Do we have people who are editors-in-chief of scientific journals with global circulation? Do we have people who are regularly plenary speakers in flagship conferences of their disciplines? And that really is what would define a leading researcher. Someone who's internationally competitive, someone who's able to shape the direction of a discipline during his or her career. And I think we have precious few such people in the Philippines. And I'd like to see that at least within what remains of my career and my life, perhaps the next generation might pave the way to doing that, if we play our cards right. So understanding the ladder and understanding what the bottleneck is, which stops us, or the typical talented Filipino scientist, what stops him or her at level 3 is perhaps a lack of adequate mentoring, because in the first place in the Philippines, you come back home with a PhD degree from a top university, top ranked university, or you finish your degree locally. The next step might be you get to become head of department or dean, or people assume that you don't need any more mentoring. I think this is where PAASE can play a role. And I would then differentiate career mentoring from scientific mentoring. And each of us actually need both. And I think it goes on for the rest of your career that you'd appreciate some kind of mentoring from someone more senior than you. So on the one hand, there's career mentoring, which is how do you manage the development of your career? How do you become, as you progress, you become less of a specialist, perhaps more of a generalist, more of a public intellectual, but that might not be something that you want to do in your prime scientific years. And the second one, which I will not speak too much about the aspect of actual mentoring within a specialized discipline, because that's really something that occurs within specific scientific circles. Now, my proposal, because President of PAASE, Giselle, is here, I think this is where PAASE can launch a flagship program in 2021, where we have a big brother, big sister kind of setup. And the notion is this, what we do is we take a young researcher in his or her 30s, perhaps overly saddled with duties at their institutions, which is understandable because we may be short-handed in many cases, or we'd have relatively few PhD degree holders in many institutions. So they would have to take up a disproportionate share of duties within their institutions, because these would also be bright people who are hard workers and thus catch the eye of top administrators in the university. So the role that we need to do is find a way to give them safe haven from the duties that they still need to perform. By safe haven, I mean a place where they can actually pursue their intellectual interests separately from their duties, and a support group of like-minded people who are able to say that it's okay to have interests which may not have, you could be proving theorems and you could love doing that. I suspect in the Philippines, this would be sort of frowned upon because it has no, proving theorems would supposedly not save lives or protect you against COVID-19 or create jobs. But if a person, mathematician, likes doing that and is good at doing that, why would we stifle his or her development just because of such pressure? So this is what I meant by safe haven. Give them a social circle which says that it's okay to pursue your intellectual interests because it's like a Philippine athlete winning a gold medal, or it's like a Philippine musician being recognized globally for his or her work. That doesn't need to save lives to build the Philippine identity. So I think the final point that I want to make before I stop talking, because I can go on and on. Final point is I'm going to quote someone who is multiple echelons above me and above the rest of us in this room. Michael Rosbash, who's a Nobel laureate from 2017, if I'm not mistaken, Nobel laureate in medicine and physiology in the BBC program Noble Minds. He made a statement which really struck a nerve with me, that research requires an element of craftsmanship or craftswomanship, if you prefer. And that means essentially that short of trying to change the world or trying to win major awards, what you really need to do is to love what you're doing and pursue it with dedication and with the intent to gradually perfect your craft. And this is an outlook which the Philippines does not do a good job of doing. I have approached my own scientific career separate from my administrative duties with the same type of, I just found a name for it this year. Craftsmanship is how I approach it. And I do it on Sundays. I do it when I'm waiting in the airport. And I think this is what has led me to where I am, which is not at that level, but I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved at age 47 so far. Nevertheless, this is a lesson which I'd like to share with the audience, and I would be happy to discuss with you further. How do we take research to the level of craftsmanship? Thank you and good morning, or good evening as the case may be.
Thank you, Raymond. Okay, that's a wonderful talk. You provided us many insights. And before we go to the Q&A, let's have the second presenter. Okay, Dr. Gisela P. Concepcion. She is the current president of PAASE and Professor Emeritus at the Marine Sciences Institute, MSI. in UP and also an academician of NAST. Okay, this person really inspired me during that time when I was still starting. She is the vice president of UP. So let's welcome Ma'am Giselle.
Thank you, Jomar. I'll share my screen now. Thanks everyone for joining. Do you see it? Do you see the screen? So
Yeah.
I wanted Raymond to be the main speaker, and he is. And I'm just supplementing what he said with a focus on collaborations and linkages as a way to empower our young and middle-level career researchers in the universities. Okay, so I'll just breeze through this. Successful outcomes of collaborations and linkages. First, why we do collaborate, and then how, and then what. Okay, and I say, well, because collaborations, the rest of nature does it. And we aim for hybrid vigor, which underlies natural selection. And here we have a coral ecosystem, which is a subject of my research. And here we have the balancing of competition and cooperation, which is good. And we have the little microbes here. So you won't say that our budding research leaders are microbes, but then, you know, these microbes, they're very important because it looks like they are really the major producers of bioactive compounds, okay, that intermediate competition and cooperation. Balancing the driving forces of biology versus ecology. So biology, you develop yourself. Ecology, you learn to live with those around you. Via competition and cooperation, the human traits are pride. You must be proud of what you know as an expert and with a very, very high level of craftsmanship. But you must also be humble because many other people know what you don't know. And my living motto is, the more I know, I know I do not know. And this impacts on nationalism versus internationalism, which are not opposing. So you can be a nationalist and be an internationalist. So why? Philosophically, why? And I told Raymond before we started that we must imbibe our leaders with philosophy. After all, we are doctors of philosophy. So why do you pursue knowledge? Because it is growing in leaps and bounds, because it's interesting, it's your natural sense of wonder that you're satisfying. But why collaborate? Because no single individual possesses sufficient knowledge to address challenges and problems, and individuals of complementary interests and expertise should come together to seek and create more knowledge. When knowledge today is growing leaps and bounds, so logarithmically on all these levels of knowledge and understanding in these two dimensions of time and space, but there are, of course, the other dimensions. And now our studies are multifactorial and complex. Ultimately, it's to foster what you call universitas thinking. And this is what I kept on saying when I was VPAA, open-minded thinking. And for this, you need the quality of humility. Okay, so scientific research is knowledge-based service to society. At least that's how I look at it. And it is the mission of PAASE, NRCP, NAST, and the DOST. Okay. So this is something I picked up from the social contract of the Pinoy administration with the Filipino people. And there are 4 key result areas. And we have transparent, accountable, and participatory governance, just and lasting peace, and the rule of law. So the social sciences are so important. And then we have the natural, physical, and computational sciences underlying rapid, inclusive, and sustained economic growth, poverty reduction and empowerment of the poor and vulnerable, integrity of the environment and climate change, adaptation and mitigation. Underlying all of this is education. And that's what I said was not found among the key RAs of the Aquino administration. But on the other hand, that administration supported general education, higher education, and R&D. And we're waiting to see how TechVoc would be transformed, say, through TESDA or through certificated training. Okay. So in UP, we have 3 mandates. And we know it's teaching and mentoring, it's research and creative work, and public service. And our taglines are live, lead, and give. And I say among all these 3 mandates, it is research and creative work. That's the Queen mandate. And the way it works is you're supposed to integrate the 3, and it's research and creative work that enriches our teaching and mentoring and our public service through new knowledge that we generate. In the classroom, our research leaders, our teachers, should be teaching their work, their research, their published work. Okay, and in that way, they can transfer the passion and the knowledge directly to their students. Same with public service. That's why we are into innovation, because we want new solutions, S&T-based solutions, scientific solutions to problems besetting our country. So this is the UP Research Guidebook, and we came up with it. We could have revised the faculty manual, and we were in this process. But before that, we first came up with a research guidebook. And here I've put the academic framework that I created when I became VPAA, because I think the researchers, the young faculty, those who were recruited, needed to live and work in a milieu that worked, that addressed all problems and identified the multi-factors that would help push this big arrow in the background forward. And the major players would be, of course, the humans. And among them, the most important would be our faculty and researchers. So anyway, this is a milieu, and it's in the OVPA website until now. And for each of these factors, we had a program, we had an initiative, okay? And now I'd like to focus on research. And in this chapter of the book, we had Val Almoro, our professor in physics and our PAASE member, who came up with the text for this and this diagram. And this is again the milieu, creating a research culture. Then, it's not just dependent on the researcher or even the institute or department. There's so many players. And then you have the whole system. But then let's go to the lab. Let's go to the research group, the creation of research groups. And here you have the senior researcher, the program coordinator. Then you have the regular members who are, the middle level researchers. And then you have your students. And in physics, they have the assembly line from the juniors, seniors, undergraduates to the postgraduates to the postdocs. And then here you have your guest researcher. There is a way to get the different teams within an institute or inter-institute to collaborate. So you can think of the research teams collaborating to address a bigger problem. Here you have at the bottom the usual scientific method, but now we know science is not practiced this way. It's practiced in a more iterative or in a more integrated way, and it's no longer sequential. And Raymond mentioned craftsmanship and high quality, and bottom line, you'd have to answer questions such as this in yellow. All right, so just a little bit on the R&D suprastructure and infrastructure. Superstructure is a name we coined for the human expert capital that's needed to carry out the research. No amount of infrastructure will make it work unless you have the competent expert research leaders in the universities and the surrounding organizations. And even the infrastructure can be best planned by the superstructure, the experts. And so we focused on human capital development, and we tried to recruit many foreign-based PhDs to the UP. And we also had the postdoc fellowships. Some of them are coming back now. Major investment. So here on average, 7 million, 10 million, some do not come back. But on the other hand, for the Balik PhD program, any of our Balik PhDs, our PAASE members present here today, they had a $500,000 package, relocation package, a 2.5 million startup grant. Okay, and then afterwards, we also allocated 1 million for a research collaboration grant with their foreign mentors and postdocs in that lab. So they would continue their collaboration. There would be no gap in their publication. Now, above and below, you have all the physical, cyber, funding infrastructure that we put in place. But above, you'll see that there were like new programs instituted, like the Emerging Interdisciplinary Research and other programs. Many of our attendees today are beneficiaries of this program. And then we had the TTBDO that we helped set up with Louis Season, whom I invited to be the director, and Alsa Rafika, consultant, who set up the invention disclosure system of UP, now numbering over 100 with many patents on their way, applications on their way to approval. And as incentives, we enhanced or we strengthened the International Publication Awards. So in most universities abroad that are mature, you don't need this financial incentive to publish. It's a natural thing. It's a second nature, a way of life. But for our universities, I think this helps. And so what we did was we tiered our International Publication Awards to the ones without the impact factor, and then to those above 2, 4, 6, and higher. And we took into consideration impact factors in journals of different disciplines. It's a very broad range. Okay? And then in UP, we also enhanced or improved the honorary, the award for the scientific productivity system. Okay, so many are familiar with the EIDR, and the idea there was to create a superstructure of hubs and spokes of sets of the scientific R&D framework within the university. So we wanted interdisciplinary research and we wanted inter-CU research. And the first cycle of the EIDR produced many publications and many outcomes involving several CUs of the UP. And our categories for the R&D hubs and spokes were covering all. So public good, so national government priorities, industry priorities, private good, job creation contributes to public good. And we also said we cannot leave behind or cannot not support academic pie-in-the-sky research priorities. Well, let me show you the results of all the efforts today and in the previous administration. So here's the UP's publication rate. And it's just a Scopus one. So there are others that are not Scopus listed, but it's telling you that the number of publications in UP increased, but not enough, by far, not to a satisfactory level, because we wanted to double this publication rate over, say, a few years. And it's telling you that there's great room for improvement. Why? Because there are 3,800 full-time equivalents in the UP. And our publication rate obviously is not more than 40%, 1,411 as of November 23. Okay? And some of us are publishing five papers a year. Okay? There's no compromise in this. The hallmark of a quality research would be international peer-reviewed publications. It means that some of our faculty are not publishing. And why is that? Well, actually, the PhD rate during my time was 33%. And we wanted to increase it to 50 to 70 to 90%, which is the level of PhD in national universities in the ASEAN, like in Malaysia. In Thailand is 70%. In UP is 30 to 33%. And today it's 27%. It's even dipped. It's dipped. So now I'll just go and tell you how, from my own personal experience, professional experience, how do we foster collaborations and linkages? First, internally, well, choose your friends, choose your collaborators, gather together expert, competent, skilled science faculty, researchers, and students. 2, brainstorm on priority problems to solve or new product, service, or system to develop our country, your region, province, municipality, or community needs. And this is all very possible now with Zoom. Select the most knowledgeable, most committed, highest EQ, and best communicator to be the leader of the group. How? Internal interdisciplinary collaborations and linkages. So not just within your institute, but inter-institute or interdisciplinary. Pursue collaborations linked with experts within closely and distantly related scientific disciplines. And in EIDR, we had this. We had social scientists coming together with natural and physical scientists and engineering scientists. Pursue collaborations and linkages with experts in other leading SUCs and HEIs in the region. Pursue collaborations and linkages with communities, LGUs, NGOs, industries, in particular MSMSEs, and get guidance support from TOS, TDOH, DHED, etc. Create a sustainable value chain from communities to academia to industry. Now let's move to external collaborations. Select external expert scientists and build trustworthy collaborations with them. Brainstorm and submit research proposals with them. Protect IP and IPRs of local and foreign parties with MOAs and MOUs between universities, which UP did. So we have many of these, and among the provisions would be the protection of the IPRs. And this is very important because you're going to try to work with international experts and ask it's the best way to publish, get you to enter into the international publication scene, okay? And that's why we also say you've got to be trustworthy friends first with your collaborators. All right, so underlying problem in Philippine science workforce, lack of PhD level experts, knowledge and innovation creators, but not just the creators. So, you know, some say, oh, we have enough innovators and creators in the UP or in our academic system. But then you also need masters and professional levels who are competent, skilled staff workers and bachelor's and tech graduates, skilled workers who could work, say, in industry. They would be organized and focused on specific regional problems or growth areas. Problem in the Philippines, no critical mass and too much in breeding. Therefore, let's suggest that you earn your PhD master's degrees abroad, best to benchmark at hybrid or postgraduate graduates, okay, with leading foreign universities. And for this, we put up a sandwich program. UP's Cooperate program allows you to collaborate with your foreign counterpart and then send your master's student for 1 year to work there or your PhD student for 2 years to work there. And this is to improve local postgraduate, tertiary, and technical programs. Okay, so in 2016, before the national elections, UP came up with a knowledge-based development and governance paper, okay, co-authored by President Pascual, myself, Edna Ko, Ernie Pernia, and Butch Dalisay. Okay, so you can read this paper. It's available in the website, but say, let's add foreign collaborations and foreign postgraduate studies to the network. Okay, so here in PAASE, that's what we have. We have this fantastic network and we're growing it. Growing it with UP IRFT, and we're growing it with TIP and other organizations. But we also have this other major network that I'd like to share with you. 90 minutes away from us is Taiwan. And we have this very strong relationship with Edu Connect, led by Professor Emin-T Wu. He's chair professor of Shujia University, and you can contact him here. Some of you have been to Kaohsiung, and we have a UP guest house there. 10 rooms named after the UPCUs that was built by a leading hotel owner. His name is Picasso Chen. And Picasso Chen had bleeding heart for superstructure. So we had a conversation. He's a civil engineer. You should see how he built his hotel, how efficient it is. His air conditioning, it's tied up with the water heating system. And this guy is Confucian in his beliefs. Okay, so he practices engineering in a very philosophical way as well. Okay, so this guy has this tagline: knowledge plus technique equals capital. Human capital consists of knowledge and technique. It's the same motto of the MIT, mens et manus. Engineering is so important. Theory and practice, okay? Translate your talk, your words into actions. I'll just tell you a bit about my story, how and what for, how, I was able to publish with my collaborators, local and foreign, and also my graduate students who are now PhD students and postdocs. So this is a recent paper. The first three authors are co-first authors. They had equal contributions. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are my RAs and graduate students, and the rest are my collaborators in a huge program. And it's just telling you that the way collaborations and research works is synergy. You've got to be synergistic. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. And this is really the subject of my research, where I put together new marine compounds with old or clinically used compounds to show synergy. So that was for infectious disease. That's methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, very, very pernicious and important in the hospital because it's hospital acquired. Here is our work, even more recently published. Just before the first one. These are my collaborators in MSI, in Institute of Biology, in Japan, and Jordan Toon earned his master's, my student, in molecular medicine. He's now a PhD student with Toto Oliveira. But where did it start? It started with publishing in Philippine Science Letters. This is another paper very long ago, and I collaborated with Sonia Jacinto of the Institute of Biology of UP Diliman, and these are also my graduate students. So it kind of works that way. So you form a group, and then you have a weekly lab meeting, and then you mentor and mentor. Be persistent, be tenacious, just in a general way, make book and follow up the work of your students every week. And I do not forget what each student RA is doing in the lab. Okay, so now here's a big program, and I'm interested in this equally. This is a moringa, malunggay, and it's for nutraceutical and anti-cancer compounds that we would find. And we've broadened our collaboration with UP Los Baños, with Gladys Completo, and with Dr. Marfori of Biotech, and with Gani Padolina of Pascal Pharma. Also with an NGO, Mylene Mati of Green Earth Heritage Foundation, where we would find moringa of single origin. Okay, therefore, we wanted to create a sustainable value chain from the farm of Mylene and then to our labs in UP, and then for commercialization with Gani Padolina. And I put together this program, and there are international collaborators here, including Jed Fahey of Johns Hopkins University, champion of Moringa, and also of our collaborators in Kaohsiung, engineering collaborators who would produce smart greenhouses for us, for the seedlings of Moringa. But this has not materialized. It's not been funded by the DOST. So that's it. I told you my story as an example of how one can move forward on your research. And I would say that when I became VPAA, I guess the reason Fred Pascual recruited me to be the VPAA was because I was doing research on the ground in the lab. Again, why scientific collaborations and linkages? Science is for knowledge-based service to society, okay? And we need to work as a group to come up with products, services, and systems that would benefit society. So I'm sorry it took so long, and I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you. I'll unshare now.
Thank you, Ma'am Giselle. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Sir Alan, I will moderate the Q&A. Sir Al, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I'm usually the mole in the audience to ask the question. But I agree with both Raymond and Giselle that we have a very challenged ecosystem in the Philippines. And when I was PAASE president in 2017, I tried to converge government, industry, and academe. Failed gloriously, but did my earnest. So I'm still at it 3 years later. So my question is indeed, how do we break it up? Because the problem is so big Raymond and Giselle, I'm focused on technology commercialization because that's my background. I spent 25 years on that, doing the last mile, as USEC Geb would say. So I've been at it for 7 years in the Philippines, and I still have not recreated my environment in the US in 1995 that made me start my company. So it takes a long time, and I know you guys have been at it, but how do we accelerate and reach the critical mass amongst ourselves? Because if we're relying on government and funding, I'm gonna tell you now, I was hoping it will happen now, but it's actually on its way down. So we need to find other sources, and I'm looking at private sector heavily now because science has been put on the forefront with this pandemic, and we're showing our contributions. Now is a good time to partner with them in terms of the mentoring. Even for my case in tech transfer, a lot of industry mentoring is required. I'm hitting it with RISA and MAP and MBC and PCCI. How do you do that in mentoring in your academic career, guys? Because if you look around us, there's only so many of us. So clearly, you guys are both internationally connected as well. How do we bring that forward here? I'm a balik scientist as well. That's one avenue, but definitely we need more than that. More institutional, like, again, I'm wanting to hear this mentoring from both a local as well as an international, beyond the level that you guys have done already in both your institutions in UP and LaSalle. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. Maybe I'll take the first crack at that question. First of all, let's not be disheartened. No matter how bad the ecosystem is, or no matter how bad we think it is, first of all, you're comparing it with the US, which had an entire century to develop it. Second of all, if I think back to 2010 or the year 2000, it's definitely levels above where we were 10, 20 years ago. So I'm happy. It's a matter of living long enough to see the fruits of the changes. So funding has grown significantly. I think public appreciation of what science brings to the table has grown and has been accelerated, in fact, by COVID-19 as one of the side effects of this crisis. However, I think what is missing in the Philippines is the sense of breaking up the work. And it astonishes me how many Filipinos, even people with appropriate scientific training, still think that the same person should take everything from molecule discovery up to bringing things to the drugstore. This doesn't happen in rare cases like Al's case. It happens in real life, but that really is, I think, your story, Al, which still inspires me. I wish I could turn my brain power into horsepower. That's still one of my targets. But seriously, that really is a rare case, and it's what often happens is you have a whole conveyor belt of researchers, ranging from those doing fundamental research in their labs to those at the other end of the conveyor belt, turning what has been progressively improved and matured, taking those to the market. And if you think about it, for example, the technological breakthroughs that led to 2 of the major vaccines for COVID now actually date back to discoveries from the turn of the century. That's how long it takes to go from lab to market. The average for the pharmaceutical industry from molecule discovery to a commercial product, if it does get there, is 12 years on average throughout the world. And thus it becomes a bit counterproductive if we send the message to everybody in the Philippines that I'll give you a grant and make a product out of it in 2 years. It's just not going to happen. What we need, what an ecosystem means, and this time I'm going to quote the cybersecurity advisor of the Israeli Prime Minister. I heard him give a talk a couple of years ago in Singapore. And he was asked, of course, this is about cybersecurity. And the question posed by the government to him was, how do we protect Israel against a cyber attack? It's going to be an arms race where you're always going to be one step behind. By the time you have a patch to deal with that cyber attack, then the cyber terrorists would have progressed incrementally one step ahead. And his answer was simple, and I think we can adapt that to a lot of things that we do in the Philippines, that you cannot start from scratch each time. You need to have shelves and shelves of half-finished or 3/4 finished algorithms and products, because any one of these might be the solution that you're looking for. And what you want is a head start so that you don't go back to zero, but you pull something out of the shelf and say, hey, this might work to deal with that cyber attack. And that principle, again, I think works for a lot of things. You know, mRNA was there for 2 decades and turns out, okay, this is one of the magic bullets that we need to come up with a vaccine. And if we don't have the proper understanding of scientific history, that's how it works, that you rarely ever get a single person taking it from fundamental discovery to a product, then we're always going to come up with suboptimal results. And at the same time, we're going to end up with disenfranchised researchers because they're not appreciated for the back end work that they're doing, discovering molecules and fundamental work, and people are questioning the value of such work. So essentially what we need is, shall we say, in reserve, all of these discoveries that we can pull out of the box as the need arises. So thanks, that's my initial answer.
I would like to answer, but first, looks like Val Reyes has to leave by 9 and he has a question. So maybe he can ask his question.
Oh, thank you, Giselle. And thank you, Raymond and Giselle, for your talk. This is for Raymond. It's a 2-part question regarding your point about looking for researchers for whom we will provide safe haven. So I guess the first part is, have you found that this lends itself to, to some selection criteria, or is this a type of decision that is more based on a gut? The second part is, what do we do about the rest of the researchers for whom we can't provide the safe haven? What would you suggest for that?
All right, thanks for that question. I think that really hits the core of our discussion this morning. First of all, I speak specifically of career mentoring rather than the sort of scientific mentoring that Giselle spoke of. So it's how do we as elders help people who may not be working in the same field as us, or who may not be even in the same institution? How do we ensure that they develop? And I think in the first place, it's important that these people not be necessarily within your lab or within your institution, because that removes some of the groupthink or the indoctrination aspect where, if you work in a lab, there is social pressure that you conform to some extent to what the institution is doing. And having someone removed from that, and someone being able to tell you, you also have your own intellectual pursuits that you want to take care of, because that might pay off a decade from now or 2 decades from now. And you never know. This happened to me, by the way, when I was much younger. So I think that's what we can do. And how it should be done is something that we can discuss within PAASE, but I think it should be a bit like making friends. You do it by gut feel and by trial and error. And sometimes it doesn't work, but in those rare cases where it does, I think that where you can change the career of 1 or 2 persons just by giving the right strategically placed pieces of advice, I think that's well worth the effort. And in terms of if we can't reach everyone, there will be ripple effects. Because on the one hand, you have a vicious cycle where if we train young researchers in suboptimal career environments, they inherit these mindsets and train their successors with the same mindset, and the system propagates itself. On the other hand, if we find a way to break this cycle by taking, say, a small minority, maybe just, for example, the young people who are in this Zoom room now, which is, we can count them with the fingers in my hands. But even starting with that, it might be a bad analogy, but this is like a virus which can infect in a good way the next generation of researchers that they will mentor themselves, and so on and so forth. So eventually that's going to have an impact. I would rather we start small, but start high quality and, give next generation researchers strategically placed pieces of advice which may change their careers, and not worry too much about the numbers, just be happy with what we're able to do. I know there is some frustration because there's always the save the world mentality that we try to do, but I think the craftsmanship approach, even with career mentoring, should be what we should take to heart, because just by doing that, and if you take 1 or 2 young researchers and try to shape them, help develop them. And if that's all you can afford to do, you should be happy with that. Just do it well and let time take its course. So thanks for that.
Okay, I'd like
Thank you, Raymond. And I'll excuse myself. Thank you.
Well, if I may just say a few words, just before we recognize EVP Dr. Ted Arbosa, who's with us. Thanks for Ted for joining. And also, I think Mahar has a question. But first question of Al is, we have products in UP that we want to commercialize. But now it looks like the impediment is the legal framework for it and the inability or, I don't know, ability of UP to sell the products. I'm referring to products like Visor or Fish Eye. And in this audience today, we have EVP TED, groups that are interested to purchase Visor. So we put Gani Tapang in touch now with Secboy de la Peña regarding this, because we were told that the 30 units that remain of the Visor are allocated for PSI high schools and a UP integrated system or UP high schools. So I think there are things that we have to work out in the university that are beyond the control of our researchers. It could be very frustrating. But I think we need to do that. I have another example. One of our speakers in chat, Mark Padilla, who happens to be my nephew, is interested in biotech, UP Las Bañas products. And in fact, we helped one of the researchers during my time improve her product under an EIDR funding. It's to produce fungal product that's based on soil, and we said it has to be lighter than that. It has to be in a sponge base. And so it looks like our researcher is now ready with the product and has done some field testing. And our entrepreneur is interested in this product. So there are things in the university that can still be improved as far as TPBDO is concerned. Now, in regard to research like mine, it's very, very challenging, but really up to our group to try to get our studies into the in vivo phase to show that these compounds are active in mice. But then we also know, see, as researchers, who are the potential international companies that might be interested in the product. And because I have collaborators from Japan who are, developing this anti-cancer compound, we would go say for PAASE company, that's a Japanese company with US connections, because they're the ones that developed the last anti-cancer drug modeled from a marine compound. So there are things like this that I think researchers can contribute to the commercialization of their own discoveries and innovation. So that's my answer to the question. Third is regarding the Haven. So I advised my own closest friends who are in the next stage not to accept administrative positions to the extent that their research will suffer. This is something I advised many in the past. That's the safe haven. And then the university provides you the incentives and the awards for your research. Okay? So I think it's important to not get our youngest recruits to become administrators. Or in the case of Dean Felino Lansigan of UP Las Bañas, when he came back from his PhD in Berkeley many years back, together with a team that the UPLB had sent out to study sustainability science, he refused to become an administrator when he came back. So it's just a matter of philosophy and principle on the part of the researchers. On the other hand, we have some outstanding researchers now in UP who are able to do the same, continue the research as well as do the admin. And you might say, well, if a good researcher is also in admin, then it will inform academic and research leadership in the university. So there are many things now that we can do that we could not do before because of technology. So that's my answer to the questions. And I think Al could ask PP Ted.
Thank you very much, Giselle. But I'll let the young people now to.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to hear from someone younger than myself.
I just broke the ice there, but it's very much broken.
But Ted Urbosa has his hand raised, and so did Al Mahar Lagmay. They had raised hands. They had questions.
Right.
I won't talk now.
May I? May I? Thank you.
Go po.
Thank you very much, Dean Jomar, for inviting me to listen to this talk. And I have actually 4 comments. I think they're comments and not questions. The first one is what Raymond said about venture capitalists. And the story was in April, when we announced that the NIH and engineering developed a ventilator, a low-cost ventilator, on social media, I got an email from a venture capitalist, a Filipino-American, who wanted to produce that low-cost ventilator, but the production would be in the US. So I got them connected with our scientists and the developers of that ventilator. Unfortunately, it bogged down, I got a snide remark from the venture capitalist and said, Ted, if you're going to let your developers join in the commercial discussion, they will not want to be they don't want to let it go. It's like parents who don't want to let go of their idea. And I agree with Raymond when he said, we've got to learn to let the scientists do the research and development innovation, but let another group do the commercialization. And that's only when the commercialization can happen. I think the other example is the PCR testing of Dr. Destura. He got into a lot of trouble trying to roll it out and got to roll it out only because of the problems of commercialization. The second one is a comment on the EIDR project. I've been doing research and I heard about the EIDR project as a faculty in the College of Medicine. And I gathered together a whole group with Diliman and proposed research. Luckily, Giselle was my professor in chemistry, so that reveals my age. And because of name recognition, I think I got the grant. Unfortunately, I became executive vice president. And it turns out I'm also the one who was going to sign the grant to myself. So I didn't find that appropriate. So I had to, what did I do? Would I give up my position as administrator or just give up the leadership in the grant? So I gave up the leadership in the grant and gave it to another partner and just kept the medical side of that particular study. So again, that comment goes on with the fact that the EIDR project is indeed a successful project of collaborating different disciplines. In fact, Ma'am Giselle, nanganak na yung EIDR project, I got another 10 million peso grant from the Department of Science and Technology and DOH of the same study. So I got a bigger grant out of that initial study. So if you ask me, successful na kaagad yung in-approve yung grant sa akin kasi nanganak na siya. The third one is an announcement to all the young people listening out there. I just had a meeting last week with our colleagues, Professor Wu, and the president of the National Kaohsiung University for Science and Technology. These are 3 universities that actually Taiwan consolidated together to make one big National Kaohsiung University of Science and Technology. They have 15 full scholarships for master's level and PhD level for the Philippines. Why are they doing this? Because their foreign students have dried up. The people they used to market these scholarships to were Cambodia, Vietnam, India. They're not coming. So there is a whole new cycle for grants for these young people who want to continue their PhD and their masters. Well, of course, science and technology, NKUSD is more known for engineering, but they also have marine science and everything. So it's nice to partner with them and be able to do that. So this is an announcement, really. I think I put out a memo already regarding this scholarship. And the nice thing they said, Professor Wu said, is if they need more, if we need more scholarships, they can provide it. It's full scholarship with the stipend, with the tuition, with board and lodging. So it's very attractive. And then it's very near. So it's very convenient. I know I've been signing a lot of study grants to UK, US, or Japan. but those are very far away, and then they get into trouble during their scholarship because of transfer of money, etc. So I think the Taiwan proposal is a very convenient proposal, and then it can continue and proceed on to partnered research. That's it. Thank you, Giselle, for the opportunity to talk to people. Thank you.
So EVP Ted, fantastic that you're pitching Professor Wu, because the quality is very high and it will cost us much less, okay, to get our PhDs and postdocs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, VP Ted. Definitely, Jomar, where's your young crowd here? I'm waiting for them to show up.
Yeah, I'm tagging people here. Erica, Joey, do you have any questions or comments or any ideas to share, or share your challenges? Mas magandang marinig din yung challenges natin. Kay, if you have ano.
Yun nga tanong ko, young pa ba ako? Joke.
Ano
Di na kasi naririnig ko below 40 daw eh. So
you can still pass for young.
Hindi, yeah, but I agree ano naman with most of the discussion that has been going on. Yun, yung nabanggit ni Raymond about having people na parang, yun nga, kung sino yung mga masisipag, eventually sila rin yung natatag kasi to do admin. So, usually, if you're young researcher, kung umpisa mo lang, hindi ka rin makahindi. So, you end up saying yes to a lot of things. And yun nga, so it sacrifices some of yung nga, if you wanted to do research, so you have to sacrifice some of your time for that. So, so I think what helped, at least for me, was to really have a group, a team. So like us, sa LaSalle, we have this group, and it's not just a team just to do research. So we're actually friends, and we discuss, we enjoy the company of each other, and a lot of our ideas are born through consistent discussions with each other. So I think that helps in being comfortable with a team of researchers, so that you can just throw out ideas na parang no judgments. Tapos with each one playing a different role, each one has their own strengths. So I think it helps for us, at least. Ayan, dito rin si Donna. Ayan, dahil mo nang yang.
Thank you. I think Donna has a question.
Maybe in alphabetical order.
Donna has a question.
Recitation ba?
Recitation
Jomar, want me to read it? I think it's Donna Balela. She's asking, do you have any advice to young researchers on how to sustain their research work, given how difficult it is to obtain grants for fundamental and even applied research, particularly if you don't have industry partners?
Okay, well, let me try that. It's this is a tough question, and the short answer really is there's NRCP, which in principle should be funding basic research. NRCP should be the last bastion of basic research in the Philippines. And you don't get, of course, you don't get the sort of huge grants that you normally would. But if you can do with a few $100,000 at a time, NRCP would be the main venue. Now, in terms of other options which are available, at least in DLSU, we've made it a point that we set aside some of our internal research funds to support this sort of work that we know it's sort of it's a form of affirmative action, in the sense that we flag disciplines which we know will have a hard time getting funding, and we support them and let those which are more marketable to the outside world pursue external funding. So again, that's constrained by what we can afford as an institution, but we appreciate that needs to be done. And then if that cannot be done, this is what I've advised my former PhD students who are not in DLSU. I think you can then be part of a large program and try to hide your basic research, hide in a good way, embed it in a large research project, so that you can, and call it by another name as well, so that you'd have a small share of a large grant, and part of that can be done to pursue your interests. And it's, of course, it brings credit to the team as well if you get published in a high-end journal, while somebody else in that group pursues the tail end of having things patented and such. The point is not to have everyone try to cover all the bases. What you can do is have something like a basketball team where you have an outside 3-point shooter, you have someone in the middle who can block shots and shoot from the inside and such. So you rarely get specialists, rather generalists who can do everything. So build a team and try to be a good role player within such a team. Maybe that can help some of the funding problems.
So Al, before we ask Mahar to ask his question.
Yeah, Mahar has a question.
Yeah, Mahar. Would you like to ask your question now, Mahar?
Yes. Actually, I have a question, a very simple question, and probably a comment on what Raymond Tan said. First, for Dr. Gisela, during your time as Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Percival Almoro asked us to write an article about promoting research in the university setting. And I think I wrote an article about answering the big questions in the academe or in the university setting. Ano po ang nangyari doon? Will it still be pushed and published, or na-halt na yun because of the change of administration? But before you answer that, ma'am, maybe I can just make a comment on the talk of Raymond Tan. Thank you very much. I was particularly interested in the quote that you gave about perfecting the craft. No, I would always hear those words from my dad. No, and he would even liken it to the craft of a shoemaker. You know? Now that we are moving towards transdisciplinary ways of doing work in the university, and also getting the people to embrace the science, because the knowledge is diminished if the people don't understand what we are saying. Would you think that that kind of statement about craftsmanship would merge the arts, literature and science, or bind them as a unifying way to get that knowledge to come across to those who need it? Just a comment probably on that statement. Maybe Gisela, first the question, and then
Giselle should
comment
go first.
from Raymond. Thank you. Ma'am, you're unmuted. You're muted.
Muted. Kindly unmute, Giselle.
Mahar.
Yeah.
So, I can't recall the particular EIDR that you were referring to, but I think you might be referring to the UP Research Guidebook, which is published. And we had chapters written there, and a major chapter was by Val Almoro, and I showed the figure from his chapter. And after each chapter, there was like a special article. Okay? So Cecilia Conaco wrote one, Elsie Jimenez wrote another, and I have to check whether your article is in the UP Research Guidebook. That's my short answer. But I'll look at that.
Thank you.
Hi, Mahar. Thanks for your question. If you'll allow me a quick allegory, let me tell you the story. Everybody, I mean. Centuries ago in medieval Europe, there was a craftsman, and his job basically was to take pieces of stone and take his chisel and carve very nice bricks out of them. So he did this for decades, and towards the end of his life, he had his son with him, and they were walking around the city, and then they came across a newly built cathedral, and he told his son, I helped build this edifice. So I think that's my parable for what the scientific enterprise should be like. You come up with very nice, solid bricks that people can rely on. You don't need to be the architect unless you're really the leader of your field, but you can have contributions which people can rely on to build big things out of the science. What is essential during this craftsman-like stage is that you need enough tunnel vision to perfect what you're doing, but you also need to understand beyond what you're doing. You need to have an appreciation of how this fits into the big picture. I mean, vis-a-vis other fields of science and vis-a-vis beyond the domain of science. And I think that's a good point you make, that perhaps bridging the scientific and the non-scientific worlds can be made easier through this analogy of craftsmanship. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Raymond. I think there's another question.
Thank you.
John, you want to do your roster now?
Yeah. First, Joey, do you have question?
Yeah, thank you, Jomar. Thank you, Doc Al. Thanks, Raymond and VP Giselle for the great insights. Yung question ko is very much on the ground as a young researcher trying to follow the footsteps of our beloved colleagues in PAASE. Yung graduate students are very important in establishing your research career. No? In the College of Engineering, most of our graduate students are in the MS program. And if you want to do really meaningful research that can level with the top researchers in the world, then kailangan may postdocs or at least PhD students. Now, knowing the difficulties of procuring and getting funding, merong dilemma for us whether we will advise my MS graduates to take their PhDs in the Philippines, or we just send them abroad to get better training, better access to equipment, and better mentoring. And I'm not sure if you two have the same experience before. Can you guide us through your thinking process in advising your former master students? The reason why I'm asking that is that most of my MS graduates na nag-decide mag-PhD, I advise them to take their PhDs abroad. But of course, yung productivity ng lab will suffer because I took years to train them, guide them, and then yung may kinabang basically PhD advisor nila, diba? And I had to go to the same process again for the next generation of master students.
May I answer that question? Okay, so Joey, I think you're outstanding. It's already been recognized as a TWAS ORD. So Joey, you are collaborating with your foreign mentor or other collaborator with a complementary expertise where you contribute your expertise at the same level. I'm so sure of that. Your only drawback is maybe lack of equipment or so. And you are in a trustful collaboration with your foreign mentor. Okay, so now you have your master's students, and you could ask them what they want to do. Do they want to go for PhD abroad? In which case, they could then be lured back to UP or the SUCs or other universities in the Philippines with the proper incentives. I think that is what we need to beef up in the Philippines. So we have many talents abroad and they want to do a high quality science, but they don't have the right incentives to lure them back after their PhDs or postdocs. And that's what we try to do with the Balik PhD program. Okay. Now, if your master's student would rather do the PhD here and you're confident that you're not going to shortchange him with the quality of his PhD, there are ways for you to get him to be trained abroad through this cooperate program of the UP, where you will allow your PhD student to work for 1 to 2 years in your PhD, in your collaborator's lab. I hope EVP TED that this is still being supported, the cooperate program, because it's very important. So inbreeding is not good. Hybriding is good, okay? And then afterwards, the idea there was when your PhD student graduates under the cooperate program, that person could be your postdoc. That was the whole idea. And that is why we said that a cooperate graduate, PhD graduate, would then also be given a startup grant. Why? because you may not have enough faculty positions in your institute or department. So in the meantime, in the first 2 years after the PhD graduation, you could still get that person back as a postdoc. The grant would probably be in your name as his mentor, but then that person would have a free reign on the use of the funds. And then he would wait for the time where there is a faculty position that would be open. So that's one mode, Joey, that we tried to think of, to try to keep your mentees in the university.
Thank you, Giselle. Now, Raymond.
Thanks for that, Joey. First of all, belated happy birthday. Second of all, my entire outlook this morning, and I said that at the beginning, is I want to talk about what's good for the researcher and not necessarily what's good for the institution. So I'm wearing Raymond Tan hat and not DLSU VCRI. And in that case, obviously, if an institution does not provide the same kind of growth environment as an overseas opportunity, by all means, advise the person to do what's best for him or for her. I would do that myself. I do know that you've had plenty of success with your master's students. I see the publications coming out of your lab. Congrats on that. I would advise them to use those as tickets to get PhD scholarships, because nothing proves it quite like, you have a diploma plus scientific paper side by side with it, done at the master's level. I think that's very persuasive for someone looking to allocate, someone say in Germany or the US, looking to allocate limited scholarship funds. I need evidence that my money will have return on investment. And this guy or this lady has done it at the master's level with presumably a shoestring budget. So that really is going to open doors for that person. Now, in terms of what you can do, obviously, step one is think what's best for the young researcher. Number two is having let that person go, so to speak, how do you keep sort of a thread of contact with that person so that your lab continues to be productive? And what I would do in this case is try to find a way to get a cooperative arrangement, or if you can steer that person to a PhD with someone that you have close ties with so that it becomes a collaborative work, and maybe pair up the PhD student who's working there with a couple of master students in your lab so that there would be joint papers from both institutions. And obviously we would have to contribute something. One of the things I've done in my own career, which has helped me survive administrator duties, is I established a reputation for special skills that people in my circles know about. And basically, a lot of them come to me for help for specific areas. It's almost like being an anesthesiologist in an operating room. If you're known to be good with anesthesia, surgeons will call on you and say, even if you play a minor role, well, not minor, of course, anesthesia is not minor, but if you're reliable in that respect, you're able to contribute to large research programs. That becomes known, and you get opportunities opening up for you and for your students. So thanks.
Thank you, Raymond. I think Editha, and then Elmer, and then Edsel. Those are the sequence so far. Tama ba, Jomar?
Yes po. Yes po. Looks like we're going to be here for a day. Sige po.
1 hour lang. 1 hour lang.
1 hour lang.
I have nowhere to go myself, so I'm fine with that.
Si Editha, are you in? You're open to get your question in?
Or I'll just read the question.
Kawawa naman si Edsel.
To Ma'am Gisela, but I think other young women researchers can also answer this. What is your advice to women researchers to succeed as we are juggling our career work, teaching, research, extension, admin, and family responsibilities? How do we multitask successfully? Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I would say that women, in fact, have challenges, but they have very special skills as well. So women by nature, they know how to deal well with complex situations, multitasking. So they know how to juggle different activities. And that's most important in mentoring the RAs, because we have, I would say, a way of trying to identify what's different with each RA and monitoring. Now, as far as the administrative career is concerned versus teaching and research, I would say that it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. And I would say that first things first, in our case, in the UP, we have less teaching load than in LaSalle. So I have seen many of our chemistry professors, they're able to attend to their children who are studying in the university, grade school and high school, and raise them to become scientists as well. We have excellent examples in Danny Casimiro and some others, children of our professors, Chicha Mantaring, of course. Okay, so obviously there are advantages to being a woman in the academe. And I would say that, yes, women can lead in many effective ways. Okay, so I think that's important. And in regard to trying to get more funding, I wanted to reply to that question. It's a kind of a virtuous cycle, as Sec Ernie would call it. You've got to start, choose your group, grow it, and then also collaborate with quite influential people. And then you are able to get more access to funding. So the EIDR is like a like seed money for more DOST funding. And then with that, you publish more results and you become known in your field. And then you become, target of other collaborators. And together you can get more funding from other sources like international funding agencies. And that's exactly what happened to me. And then in my case, you'd say that Toto Oliveira and our group in the University of Utah, their PhD students are all my RAs. 4 of them got into the program this year and in the years past. And these are the people who are continuing to be mentored, and they have promised to come back afterwards. But with a very, very high level of training, technology is transferred to our lab and then continued through their PhDs abroad. And their subject of research has been the same since they were master's students and then now as PhD students. So there is continuity over generations and also, cross-sectional collaboration. So,
thank you, Giselle. Now I think I need to get Elmer in the order that it's received, guys. So Elmer and then Edsel. So Edsel can eat.
Hello, good morning sa Pinas dyan. I'd like to add some comment and question. So I'm a product of a good mentoring there from the Philippines. I finished my MS. I was supposed to go back, but some of the members know the reason why I didn't go back. And I have an EIDR with UP, and I serve as an advisor for a cooperative that both projects have, unfortunately were affected by COVID. Now, when I have the EIDR, we have this observation from another PAASE member who's big time here in New York City. Naisip namin bakit bongga yung mga budget ng mga grant, pero short time lang yung binibigay sa mga researcher para gawin nila. So, naisip namin, it could be an added pressure to the researcher to do that. And if you're a starting young scientist, masyado yatang pressure yun. Because to tell you frankly, I'm more pressured with that project in the EIDR than the project that I have here in NSF. Okay, so how do you think it can be improved? And I think Edsel from NSF will tell you something about after I ask this question.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick answer to that, Elmer. So I'm glad you had an EIDR with UPLB. And was it?
Yes. No, with the late Al Gabriel.
Yes.
And I have stopped it because I've been at home since November 18 until January 18 because we're not allowed to go to the building, only essential personnel, and doing research is not essential in our university, unfortunately.
Well, let me just say in the presence of EVP Ted that when we were, managing the EIDR and we conceptualized it, it's on a 2-year basis, renewable, yes. And we, designed it in such a way that there would be 2.5 million projects to a program, so it's interrelated. And the implementation of it was very, very reasonable. So if there were delays because of procurement, then we would consider all of that. So that's all I have to say. It could be improved in its implementation, but we were very, very considerate when we were evaluating the EIDR. And the first batches of EIDRs, cycles 1 to 3, produced something like 67 publications by the of Carla Di Malanta, then AVPAA already, also current AVPAA.
Thank you, Giselle. So now Ed.
May I comment quickly on Elmer's?
Raymond, and
this is from, even though it's probably an internal UP thing, I think it's a prevalent mindset in the Philippines that everybody wants grants to do everything. And it's, my main answer here is we need laser-like focus, and we need to learn to break up big problems into small, manageable pieces where we get high-quality results. It's hard for politicians. It's hard, for example, for DOST to justify paying with taxpayers' money for things that might not seem to be connected to some end that benefits the man in the street or person in the street. But that's the job of DOST, to understand how it works and to argue for it. And this is something which we still need to work on in the Philippines. That's what an ecosystem means.
Thank you.
Well, that's why we broke up EIDR into units of 2.5 million, so that they could focus on, a particular aspect of the problem. It's not like
Thank you. Thank you, Giselle. Okay, Edsel.
So it's my turn. Okay, so I'm getting hungry. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment. And I wanted to comment on certain things that relates to Raymond and of course Gisella's. In the first one is about mentoring. I always think that mentoring is mentoring by example. This is my experience. When I went to the US, I said, what should I be doing? And I was looking at these professors that are publishing very highly in the top journals of my field. And it became my aim. I said, how could I do that? There were no Filipinos that were doing this. So my aim was that, but you have to look at them and how they're doing it. It's not that they have to tell you what to do, but it's more acquiring the culture of how they are doing it. So I think that aspect of mentoring will come about by having, say, Raymond or the top researchers there in the Philippines, which could be served as models for these young people. Because you cannot teach a person to become a good researcher. You could make them follow you in some sense. And I think that's very important. The second part is that aspect about art in science, in research. I do believe that doing research is like art. It's an apprenticeship. As Raymond earlier was saying, it's an art. You want to write a good paper. You have to have that idea of excellence, of doing it the best way that you could. And that's the only way that you could publish in the top journals by doing that. There's a nice book about, I think it's about Richard Feynman. And this was written by James Glick. And there's a passage there about a book by Polanyi about how do you become a scientist. In the essence, there's that you become a scientist by following a master. In the beginning, you're a junior scientist, you're an apprentice. And you look at this master and you say, how are they doing it? It's just like in chess. If you're beginning in chess, you're not as good as the top one, but you try to follow how they are doing it. And I think that is very important. Art in science I think goes in hand because you're trying to aim for perfection. And a young scientist will not become a star overnight. You have to earn your wings. How do you earn your wings? You publish in good journals, maybe not in the very beginning, but you start publishing, and people starts noticing you. The community starts noticing you. And I think some of you, Raymond, Gisela, have been noticed that way. But it takes time. It's not going to come about overnight. That's impossible. You have to earn your wings in some sense. It's like in any profession that we are doing. So that's important. So it's a sequential process, and you build through that. I think the third thing that I wanted to comment about is the importance of fundamental research, basic research. I know the Philippines, we have a lot of societal problems that needs to be solved immediately. But we should not ignore the idea of basic or fundamental research, because that's the one that provides the foundation towards solving those difficult problems. Raymond was mentioning about the vaccine, and the theory behind it was developed 2 decades ago. We were sharing articles the other day about this. So it's basic research that do it. If you are only looking for instant gratification, that's not the way to do it. We have to build a foundation. Of course, some will be applied researchers, but we should not penalize those who wants to do basic research or fundamental research. The National Science Foundation here, for instance, it's really about basic research. If you simply give us a proposal to do applied research, we would not fund you. What we are looking for are the fundamental research that will breed new knowledge and create the foundation for further knowledge, because those are sometimes more important. I think those are things that are things that I wanted to comment about. So let's not look too much into just the applied one, because the applied one's important, but the foundation is also very important in that sense.
Thank you, Edsel. Yeah. Very good. Okay, now I think next is Joel, correct?
Yes. Good morning, everyone in the Philippines. This is a very engaging discussion. I was late. I came in around after 9 a.m. your time because I had a meeting here. But I caught the discussion about whether or not to send grad students abroad. But the great thing is that it's not either or. I think you can avail of your students going abroad, but also returning. And that is my own experience with the students from the Philippines who got sent to my lab for training. And that was through the sponsorship of Fulbright Scholarship, USAID Stride, and also ERDT, actually. So I had a chemical engineering PhD student at UP Diliman who spent, I believe, almost 12 months in my lab doing her research. But after that, she had to go back to UP Diliman to complete her degree. I had one from the LSU sponsored by Fulbright who spent about a year with me in my lab, but again, had to return to the LSU to complete the degree. And then after that, I had another 4 students from the LSU ranging from 2 months to about a year sponsored by USAID Stride. I think that is extremely valuable for your students. And Edsel mentioned the matter of culture. And one advantage of the students coming to the US or maybe Australia or some other parts of the world is not only do they get to do the research that they need to do because there's more equipment, whatever, but a very important thing as well is they get to imbibe the scientific culture in other countries. And so they're able to broaden their perspective in terms of what science or the practice of science and engineering really looks like as it's being practiced all over the world. And that is an invaluable and intangible experience for the students, but it's extremely valuable for them to learn. So anyway, I just would like to impart that to you. And I really would like to encourage you to encourage the Philippine government, the OST, to really increase the budget for providing those opportunities for Filipino students to do a sandwich program, research program in other countries, because it's extremely valuable for the students. And it's a win-win. It's a win for the students, and it's a win for the local institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And I think the next is Ronilo, if he's still around. Did ask the question. Giselle partly answered that question. Ronilo, you're still around?
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning.
Speak up.
Thank you, Dr. Giselle, for answering the question. I would just like to, again, ask if there are other comments about the mini-me mentality, because I'm a product of Japanese education, and it has been one of the, I don't know if it's a criticism or a comment that, you know, in that system, some professors would like um, to impart to you, you know, the knowledge and the skills that they have in that particular system. I don't know what are your thoughts on this, as it is applied in the Philippines, or should we as mentors be more open in trying to let our mentees explore even transdisciplinary approaches to the expertise of the particular lab we are building. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. That's a very good question. If I may be allowed to comment a bit. It's a very delicate balancing act, because in the first place, to some extent, you're replicating yourself in a PhD student, because the whole point of having someone work with you for a couple of years doing research is they need to be able to rely on your expertise. And by nature, there's going to be osmosis where your own knowledge and skills will be passed on to that person. If you were to do it in something out of your core area of strength, then that might be a bit dangerous or tricky for the student, not having someone to lean on. So there is going to be some degree of replication. On the other hand, the mentors, I think, need to be conscious of the fact that eventually the mentee is going to need to develop his or her own identity. And there are many ways of doing it. Part of the problem, I think, with PhD studies overseas is that, for example, in the case of a professor from Japan or the US or Germany, they may not be fully aware of constraints that exist in developing countries. And they may not, in their heads, they may not be thinking of transferability of the research to a less enabled environment. So this might be the shortcoming, and this is where some mentoring also needs to be thought of to allow that transition to take place. Now, in terms of what you can actually do if you have PhD students here in the Philippines, I have a very simple challenge that I pose to all my PhD students. Essentially, the challenge is, after you get your degree, show me that you can publish a solo article in a high-end journal by yourself. And I'm happy to note, for example, that my last male PhD student who got his degree at age 24 in 2017, still a record holder in engineering in the Philippines, a few days ago got his paper published in a journal of impact factor 7+. So I sent him a message. He's a Star Wars fan, so I said, now you're a Jedi with this. So having a challenge like that, a milestone which they can pursue outside of your shadow, would be a good way to distance them from you, at least from a scientific perspective.
May I answer, Ranila? Thanks for that, Raymond.
Yes, thank you very much.
I think what Raymond here is saying also is the mentor has to be inspirational for the mentee to be aspirational. So that's very important. And if you do not want to pursue the field of your mentor, at least imbibe his philosophy for doing science. But on a more detailed level, Ranila, I'd like to distinguish between a master's, PhD, and postdoc. Okay, masters, you're usually going to pursue a research on an interest of your mentor that's funded. Okay, so it's not very independent. Okay, for the PhD, that's the first show of independence. You're going to be required to show independence of the conceptualization and the implementation, experimentation of your work. Okay, so we are talking about other fields that are not just computational, Raymond. We're talking about fields where you need a lot of experiments to be done by others, and you're not also just the expert for that, even for your PhD, because you want a high quality publication or research, okay, that has many, many aspects. Okay, but at least for the PhD conceptualization and the overall implementation is your responsibility. But the funding is probably still from your mentor. Okay, what about the postdoc? And this is what USAID Stride identified as missing a big, big gap in UP and in other Philippine universities. There are no postdocs. Okay, and the postdoc position is critical in the US research system or even in Europe and Australia. So the postdoc is really an independent researcher and has a mini project for which he wrote the proposal and got the funding himself. And this applies to my daughter, who is a postdoc in MIT. And her research is different from her mentor's group, okay? So she's into chromatin remodeling for lung cancer. But the whole group of Tyler Jacks is more into immuno approaches to cancer. But anyway, that's the first point, Renilo. Second point, I think, is you need to identify your sources of funding in the future through your mentor or through new collaborators that you would like to forge. And you can only do that if you've published your first papers and then you present them in international conferences and then you seek out trustful collaborations. Okay? It applies as well to our national conferences. You can seek out collaborations in the Philippines as well.
Okay, thank you, Giselle. So I think it's Erica's turn. Finally,
just a short comment to add something on Giselle's thing. In the US, actually, we want younger people to get out of the shadow of their mentors. We want them to do research that are different from what they were doing as graduate students or postdocs. Otherwise, there's always going to be that aspect of, are you independent enough? So we want you to be independent. So that's a very important thing I think that we need to do in the Philippines too. Yeah, you have to, the young person should set about setting his or her own path in independence. The mentorship is too bright.
So now I think Erica is an example of somebody who got let go and it's really went very, very. Erica, please.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I was saying there's a lot of very, very interesting points and I agree with all of them completely. The whys are very clear, like what I said, but I think the how is the most difficult part. So like what I pointed out earlier, for example, in the Global Innovation Index, because we're writing the AI roadmap for the Philippines, it's very obvious there that we have very weak industry R&D performance among all the other countries, even in the ASEAN. No? So my question is, what roles are we playing as academic researchers in this aspect? I'm asking because from my perspective, and I could be wrong, we don't seem to consider other KPIs or at least not look at them on the same level as publications, for example, in our R&D programs. For example, like what I mentioned in the chat box, KPIs such as the industry dollars generated or the jobs created because of the R&D that we're doing. Because at AIM, in the last 2 years, for example, through the MSDS program, we have engaged with over 25 actually industry-funded R&D projects to help push for innovation in their processes and also in their products. Well, unfortunately for these kinds of projects, we are bound by non-disclosure agreements. So meaning we are not allowed to publish findings, right? So naturally, of course, I miss publishing very, very, very much, especially in index journals. So from my perspective as a young scientist, I think it would be good to have mentors, more like career mentors in this space as well. Like, do I publish or do I do industry? Because it's difficult. Like this year, we got 15 additional R&D projects with government as well. So I guess that's what I'm saying. Like I do agree with all the points, and I would love to be publishing again, but maybe we just have to accept that sometimes something's really gotta give, or I could be wrong. I don't know. That's why we need mentors for this aspect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that, Erica. If I may I think you're the perfect example of the sort of person who should be given the safe haven I spoke of earlier. On the one hand, of course, industry funding is a good metric for the impact of research. The reason it doesn't, in my opinion, the reason it doesn't get as much weight, apparently, in the way we look at institutions in the Philippines is because we don't have enough numbers for it to actually, it becomes so sporadic that the numbers aren't reliable. But eventually, after perhaps a decade, that'll be a robust metric, which should be part of the overall scorecard. But as I said, I wanted to approach this morning's event with the outlook of looking out for young people, young researchers, rather than looking out for institutions. And yep, you either create that safe haven for yourself. Now it matters a lot if you actually are fully invested in the industry engagement work and would be happy to do it 100% of your time for years to come. But if you're in a position where you feel like you're giving up something which you would actually like to do, that this is the craftsmanship that I spoke of earlier, then you're missing out on something. And it's possible that, you could be, I know you're doing work on AI, but I've asked you and many computer science colleagues this. I actually consider you a computer scientist, although I know your PhD is in physics.
Right.
And Al knows about this as well. There is plenty of work being done on AI tools to solve specific industry problems. That's good. That's where the rubber meets the road, as Al would say. But I was hoping that there would be Filipino computer scientists developing the next generation algorithms at the basic end that would change the way computing is done 10 years from now. And there are people smart enough to be doing it with the talent to do it, except that nobody's telling them that this is worth pursuing. And it could be even higher up the value chain of science, where you could have theorists proving theorems that certain algorithms might actually be dead ends in the future, better go in some other direction. So these are the sort of work that in the Philippines, we don't have the scientific culture and tradition to appreciate. I know from Edsel's stories that there's an AI initiative by the National Academy in the US, which is actually looking into that, the mathematics of AI to figure out what is next generation computing 20 years from now. And if we don't do this, for the Philippines, the consequences will always be at the tail end of the scientific value chain. For the young and talented researchers, what we might be missing out are opportunities for career-defining discoveries. I remember asking you a couple of years ago, do you not dream of having Filipino Nobel laureate at some point this century? Should that not be part of national aspiration? So I leave it at that. I think, I will make one final point about something has got to give. I've been in high-level administration in VLSU since 2013. And I promised myself this will not compromise my commitment to my own intellectual interests. So I think it can be done if you really commit to it. You may need to sacrifice other things like Sundays and such, but it can be done with the will to do it. So thanks for that. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much, Raymond. Yeah,
Now
we should have coffee one of these days. I have so much more questions.
Yeah. we need to do that, Erica. I miss having conversations with you and Chris.
Zoom coffee now.
Asking Erica and Jomar to organize the coffee. This should be more frequent. But I just wanted to point out to everyone that PIM is doing it right and is leading the way. So I've been like a panelist in the thesis of their master's in innovation and business. And that's, I think, what Erica's telling us about. There are already such startups, and they might eventually contribute to improving our score in the Global Innovation Index. But recently, they also launched the PhD Data Science program. Many of us were at this launch. And that's, I think, where, Erica, you as mentor and your PhD students, EVP Ted, I think all of them are from UP.
Yes.
Engineering and, so there's now like this major link between NIP and engineering and AIM. So they are attracting the best students to their PhD data science program. And the requirements for graduating this program, very, very, very steep. It's like UP and NUS requirements. So I think you have moved in the right direction, Erica, and your own fate of continuing to publish is going to be realized, okay, with your PhD program as a mentor.
Thank you, Ma'am Gisela. And I also hope that through the PhD program that the Raymond's dream of, which is my dream as well, that we publish in computer science top journals wherein we really introduce algorithmic innovations in AI. We really hope to achieve that in the PhD program.
Thank you, Erica.
Al, can I give a quick comment, please?
Clearly, the question that Erica also posed earlier was the lack of industry-academe collaborations in doing research. And when we showed it in the US Age Stride White Paper in 2015, that's still been the focus of my efforts through the Philippine Government University Industry Roundtable, the now Philippine Business for Science and Technology. All these efforts are to converge industry to a single focal point that can interact with the National Academy, with PAASE, and with the UST. And unfortunately, it's still not there, Erica. It's a work in progress. I talked to, Risa Mantaring, I talked to MBC, my father-in-law's former chair of MBC, and Ed Chua now is the MBC chair. It's still very difficult because we don't listen to them enough. We don't know what their hair on fire problem is. So how can you help a whole industry if you don't know what their language and what their needs are? So I think you guys, young researchers out there, you want to have more industry looking research like Erica. Well, of course, it starts with an A-site investment from Aboitiz for $10 million. Definitely, they have some firepower to do the research for Aboitiz. But they have grown that to a phenomenal number that all the other industry players are looking to AIM now in terms of doing more industry looking or outward looking type of research. So for the rest of us who are in UP system, in LaSalle, and even the second tier universities, I think PIP is doing a good job in having, since they had their professional science masters for the engineering side of collaborations for industry. So, but there's one premise in that. We teach innovation core here for 2 years with De La Salle, with Raymond. This is the I-Core methodology for translating research into products and commercialization in NSF for the last 10 years. They started they trained over 1,000, started 250 companies, raised close to $500 million or $250 million. We're producing that already here since 2018. We only have trained about 25. There are efforts there, guys, and definitely that's something that we ought to discuss in a separate coffee or separate dinner or separate session. But I agree. It depends on who do you think your customer is. And I have to go back to what Raymond said. Our customer today is really our young researchers. You tell us where you want to go and what do you want to do, then that's the best way we can mentor you or find you a mentor that can actually is a good example or a Jedi in your particular field. So I think that's probably my take on this one. Who's the next one, Omar?
Can I just give a quick comment, please, Al?
Yes,
It's
Joel.
Right. So Erica reminded me of one issue that remains a dilemma in the Philippines for investigators, and that is whether to file for a patent or to publish an article publication. In the US, that's no longer really an issue because in the US, there's provisional patents that can be applied really quickly, applied for quickly, and you get a protection for your intellectual property of up to 1 year. And within that 1 year, you can apply for the full patent. But once you have the provisional patent, which you can get in a matter of a week or 2 weeks, then you can publicly disclose your intellectual property. So in the last APAMS, we had one session, and actually, Al, I think you were there as well. We co-chaired the session. So we spoke with the IPOPHIL director, and we recommended this to him, and he's quite open to this prospect. And I think that we really need to kind of push the IPOPHIL to go for that. And they are in agreement that it's important for IPOPHIL to offer provisional patents to inventors and investigators in the Philippines, because that would help a lot. That's going to remove that unnecessary dilemma for investigators of either going for a patent or waiting for years to be able to publish their results.
Thank you, Joel.
I have to go to another engagement, so thank you.
I did file 15 provisional patents, and most of them, 10 of them became granted US patents. So I know the value of provisional. I've been filing them for 15 years. Unfortunately, here in the Philippines, I talked to several law firms whether they have capability to draft a provisional patent alone, not even a full application. And they said, we outsource it with our foreign corresponding. So I was telling them that we can draft it ourselves. And I told Ivo Phil with the new Director General, Roel, and it's a little more challenging to institute it, considering that EPO, Japan, and the rest of the PCT countries don't have provisional. But I still see the value in it. And if not for anything else, to the young researchers, you want to publish, file a provisional in the US. It's only $25 now, or $500 during my time, but it's $25, I think, for young researchers. So, and you can do it yourself. I can teach you if you want to. But these are things that are in the mechanics that truly can help us. Again, depends on where you want to go. But first, we need you to tell us, your slightly older gentlemen and ladies, to where do you want to be. So I think that's probably the challenge. We're not communicating enough as it is. And I think with this Zoom thing, Erica, you can always invite us for coffee. Just send over the pouches, I guess. So yun lang. Jomar, sino susunod?
Okay, I think this will be the last question from, I don't know if there are other who will ask pa, but from Ruji. Ruji, could you provide us a brief background first? What is CMO 15? And then you can ask the question.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Ruji.
So I'm looking at the research ecosystem, and I'm looking at the importance of the faculty members in the research ecosystem. My concern is that before we can come up with a critical mass of researchers, we need to make sure that we are producing researchers themselves. Unfortunately, in the CMO 15 series of 2019, which is the new policy standards and guidelines for graduate education, it categorizes graduate programs into either academic or professional tracks. No? And so for academic, which is MA and MS, and then for the PhD academic, that's for academic, for doctorate, it's only PhD. These degrees require publication. However, for the professional tracks, so you can either have a Master of or Master in, and any degree that is Doctor of or Doctor in, that's already categorized as professional doctorate or professional graduate programs. They do not require publication at all. And unfortunately, we see that a lot of faculty members from the whole spectrum of schools, either they are state universities, colleges, or private HEIs, a lot of the faculty members take professional doctorate degrees, so doctor in or doctor of, for which publication is not anymore a requirement. And so I feel that this might lead into an even bigger dilemma if what we are after are publication and also our research outputs, because we are, even at the graduate level, the schools might not be training the faculty members anymore into doing publication work. Fortunately for TIP, we do offer a doctor in information technology, and I'm very happy to inform everyone that we have been moving our students in the direction of free publication. And it might also interest you because I know that for the PhD CS, we do push them for publication, but even for the IT program, we are pushing our students to do algorithmic research. And our graduates are now thriving, and they are now producing a lot of researches. But my only dilemma is that with the new CMO out, we might be losing on the training of our students, faculty members, because most of them are taking the professional track masters and professional track PhD. So I'm hoping that, I don't know how we can solve that dilemma now.
Okay, allow me to comment briefly. Thanks for that, Ruji. I think what's going to happen, and again, I'm looking at this from the perspective of the students and not from universities. It really boils down to the question of whether the student is after the diploma or after the knowledge and skills that come with the diploma. As we noted earlier, I mentioned that in the European framework, actually getting that degree, that PhD degree, just brings you to the threshold of level 2, which is not even independent researcher yet. So it shows a bit of immaturity in the Philippine ecosystem that there is the expectation of almost like a branding of you being a mature researcher once you get the PhD. And I agree that there might be an incentive, a perverse incentive actually, for students to go into the industry track just as a shortcut to get the degree, perhaps get promoted by his or her home institution without getting the required skills. And if that's the case, then what happens is the person would have missed out on a developmental opportunity. And the institution, the sending institution, would have gained superficially by having nominally a doctorate degree holder in their rosters, but without the accompanying skills. So it boils down to choices that we make. Do we take shortcuts and go for the cosmetic earning of degrees, or do we pursue the actual skills? Now, if your intent is actually to pursue a career in industry, the sort of thing that Erica mentioned earlier, for example, you want to be a computer scientist working with a firm that actually implements technologies, then it's appropriate that you get an industrial doctorate with that kind of orientation, where publications would be not a priority. But if your intent is to go into academia, then that would be a misfit that would give institutions and individuals short-term gains and shortcuts, but they would be missing out on long-term benefits of building the actual skills and the actual research capability. And of course, they would be, in the long run, shortchanging their students as well.
May I speak a bit? So thanks for that important question. The professional master's has value. So in the Marine Science Institute, we have a professional master's in management program. And this is intended for those who will join government, for example, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences. In UC Berkeley, they have a professional management program. And in the PICARI and the EIDR, I understand, not ERDT, there was some who were being encouraged to also complete the professional master's management program in UC Berkeley. So they are supposed to be the adapters of technology. So this would be important when you have, for example, contract research. That's another strategy, Erica, contract research. Ask industry what they need, and then you try to connect with the experts in academia, say through the professional managers. Okay, so that's one mode. All right, so I think what you're saying also about the propensity to earn the doctors in, is prevalent in some SUCs and HEIs, private HEIs. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I have an indication that it is like used to get promoted in your university and also to make you qualify for an academic leadership position. So management is always good for academic leadership. But now USAID Stride and PAASE will be partnering to actually train the academic leaders and R&D innovation leaders of SUCs and private HEIs. And I know that TIP is interested in this. It's very important that the leaders are synchronized in their efforts, their policies, and their implementation to support the research in the university. And it's important that these academic leaders are actually experienced in research themselves. So I think it's so important at this point that we should identify leading SUCs and private HEIs in every region of the country. So that's always been my strategy. Just focus and select the few leading ones, okay? I said this even for the public high schools. okay, to get their scholarships, say in UP. Public high schools, valedictorians, salutatorians, they would be the ones who would, get scholarship support from the government. But the same thing with the SUCs and the private HEIs. We could select the best in every region of the country and make sure that their faculty get their proper training and their proper degrees. It's not a PhD in education. It's not a PhD in management or a doctor in this or that without research or without a publication. So I believe in implementing actions. So we have basic principles that I think all agree on, but we need to move forward on recommendations that are implementable. Raymond, I think that's so important. And with that, I always say the computing sciences is a major field of advantage in the Philippines. As you recognize, there's so many talents here because you don't need as many experimental equipment or instrumentation as we would in the experimental sciences. So I think we should really focus also on developing experts in this field, PhD level experts, generating new knowledge in AI and data science. Thank you. I have to go. I have an emergency. So I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ma'am Gisela. I think we can end. Raven has a question, but I think Sir Al already answered that question. So
thank you.
We can end now. Thank you, Ma'am Gisela. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas to everyone. If I don't,
yeah.
in case I
Merry
don't see
Christmas.
you.
Happy New Year na rin.
Raymond, don't say Merry
tomorrow again.
Everyone, we're going to have a Zoom Christmas party in PAASE. We will. December 22, it will be announced.
Okay, I didn't know that. I wasn't invited.
We're always just a week.
Now I know the secret.
No. And we're going to invite our friends like EarthD and everyone else, DIP, Stride, whoever wants. So we're going to have these conversations, Raymond. Okay? And over a drink. So people can unwind. And this can go through the wee hours if you wish. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you po. Thank you very much.
Wait the PAASE.
Thanks, Jomar. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Salamat.
Salamat.
Thank you.
Salamat. Ingat.
Thanks, Jomar. Thanks, Giselle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Keep me in the loop.
Labang picture taking.
Ted, critical. You're so critical, Ted.
Yeah, I'm the only science here in the Execom. May sociology sa academic ad, tapos may lawyer sa boss ko. Ako lang pala yung nasa science. Ano?
That is why I thought it was perfect that you were EVP.
Correct.
Yeah. Are already. And then,
but you did a lot of work. We're continuing all of it when you were VPA. So all of it are being
you there. I'm really confident. Thank you so much, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jomar, photo daw. Picture taking daw. Jomar.
Wala na eh.
Naubos na. Pero we have a recording po, so it's okay. So
Sige, Jomar. Thank you sa invite, Jomar.
Thanks, Gisela.
I'm ending the meeting for all. Thank you. Bye-bye.